everyone, and welcome to FraudCON 2021. As a single woman in her 30s who just went through over a year of a global pandemic and more than 4 lockdowns in Israel, I know what loneliness feels like. And in this, I'm not alone. More than 3 out of 5 Americans say that they are lonely, and this tendency has become worse in the last couple of decades. In the Western world, we are still predominantly looking for romantic relationships to solve our loneliness. More than 30% of Americans say that they have used dating apps in the past. For me, what's shocking working in the fraud world is that only 18% of the users think that data breaches and identity theft are very common in these platforms. This is why I have chosen this fraud ring, and this is why this fraud ring is so close to my heart, because I really want to protect those vulnerable people who are using these apps. My name is Réka Eszter Bodó. I'm originally from Hungary. That's the accent that you're hearing, but I have lived in Israel for more than 10 years. I have a first degree in physics and mathematics, and then I studied Talmud at the Hebrew University. And for more than 4 years, I have worked for Riskified, first as a fraud analyst in the fraud intelligence team, and currently as a research analyst in the model training team in data science. So Riskified is an AI platform that powers the e-commerce industry by preventing fraud, by removing friction for good customers. We leverage machine learning that benefits from a global merchant network. And amongst the many products that Riskified has, our main offering is still our chargeback guarantee product. What does it mean? It means that when a customer places an order on an e-commerce platform, before the funds are captured and the order is shipped, Riskified reviews the order in order to make sure that it's not fraudulent and that the merchant is not going to lose merchandise or product on a chargeback order. The e-commerce fraud is currently one of the most lucrative branches of the organized crime. So there are a lot of sophisticated attacks against our merchants. Because of this, in Riskified, there are a lot of teams of analysts in different departments who are constantly monitoring trends in fraud and chargeback data, both with supervised and unsupervised machine learning in order to prevent these attacks from being successful. So I am one of those analysts in one of those teams. So imagine that one morning, with coffee in your hand, you are waking up, you open your computer and you start looking at what's happening with your merchant. You start looking at what patterns, what tendencies you can see in fraud and chargeback data. And what you start seeing are orders that just seem perfect, that suddenly you have fraud and chargeback notification on them. These orders look so perfect that a couple of years ago, when we were still doing manual review and I was still manually approving and declining orders, I would have approved this order without a moment of doubt. What you see in the order, it's an order for gold bars, a little bit over $2,000, which is very, very common in the industry. It's an American and US credit card with full match in the AVS, which means that the billing address that we see in the order is the same as the billing address that the bank has for this credit card. The email that's used in the order has been active for over 16 years and has very good information on it. The IP that the order has been placed from is completely clean. There is no proxy indication. Even more, we see external linking inside our network with a different merchant from the same customer. The billing and the shipping address is the same, meaning that it's being shipped to the same address as the customer has added as a billing address. And as I said, this billing address is the same as the credit card has for that the bank has for this credit card. And David is living there. He's a bit over 50 years old. Everything in the order looks perfect. There are no mismatches. There are no conflicting identities. There is nothing that would raise suspicion that this is a fraudulent order. And suddenly this order becomes a chargeback. So as a fraud analyst, your first thought is, of course, chargeback abuse, liar buyer. meaning that the person who placed this order is the actual credit card owner. And after they have received the merchandise, they call the bank and they say like, oh, I didn't actually place this order, in order to get the money back for this order and double dip to make double the money, also have the gold and also get the money back from the bank. This is very common. So when we see tendencies like this, the first thing that we do is we start looking through social media in order to see whether there is a new forum about some life pro tips about how to get rich fast by ordering gold and then submitting a chargeback to the bank and making a lot of money really fast. But we came up empty-handed. We didn't find anything. What we did find is that the identities who are placing these orders are extremely open online. We have found a lot of data about them, public social media profiles, photos of them, recipes, their LinkedIn. And these identities were really good. They were a lot of darling elderly people with very innocent looking profiles, not people who I would think are fraudsters and not even scammers or abusers. So once we started seeing that, our manual investigation continued. So we started investigating. As I said, the first step was that we began checking out the identities of these suspicious chargebacks in order to understand who are these people. And we have found that they look very innocent and they look very good. The second step was we contacted our business partners, the merchants, in order to start discussing the trends that we were seeing, in order to ask them whether they have seen similar trends, to talk to their customer service agents, and just understand if we are on the same page about this. The next step was when we started seeing that something very interesting and suspicious. We started seeing that on the chargeback notices, we see different names than what we see in the orders. So what we did, we reached out to our partner banks and we started discussing with them what we are seeing. And in the last step, after all of this, we started actually reaching out to the end customers, to the customers who have placed the orders, whose name we see in the order, and we started talking to them together with our merchants. And once we started doing that, a lot of things became much, much clearer. What we have understood once this has happened is that these people who are placing the orders are unknowing accomplices in a crime. What you will see here is kind of a prescription of a call we had with one of these customers. She called us, we called her, then she called back, and she told us the story that she met someone on Plenty of Fish, which is a dating site, a dating app. His name was Kevin. They started talking, they started dating, but it kind of the relationship didn't really work out. They never met in person. And then once they broke up, Kevin said that like, oh, he sees that she's a very nice person, a very great person. And he asked her whether she wants to help him in his job. He told her that he works for an organization that helps the homeless both in the US and abroad. And she agreed to help them in order, to do charity, in order to volunteer for this organization, to help the homeless. And she said that he sounded American. They have been talking for a while. So what happened is he gave her a credit card number that he said that he opened under her name. And he asked her to place an order for a couple bars of gold with her email address from her computer to shipping to her home. And then once she has received the packages, Kevin sent her some FedEx labels, and she put the FedEx labels on the packages where she received the gold. And she gave it back to FedEx with the new labels, and she believes that the new forwarding address is somewhere in Kuala Lumpur. After we talked to her several times and the merchant also talked to her, she understood that she was part of a crime. She felt very guilty. She felt horrible about herself. After we discussed what she can do, she contacted the FBI. She gave them everything that she had on Kevin. She blocked Kevin's number. She even changed her own number. She unregistered from Plenty of Fish. Anyway, so what actually happened here? There are 3 identities in this fraud scam, 3 different identities. First, there is the fraudster, who is the criminal behind everything. He or she actually is the one who is pulling all the strings. They are invisible completely. We don't see them in the order or anywhere in the e-commerce transaction. And they are the only one benefiting from this scam. They can be in America or abroad, can be far or close anywhere else. There is the cardholder, who is the owner of the credit card used in the order. The credit card wasn't actually opened under the mule's name. In a second, we will understand how it happened, but they are the only one. The cardholder is the only one who is suffering financial loss, and they are also someone who we don't see in the order. They are invisible. The first time that their name pops up is in the chargeback or fraud notification. And then there is the mule. The mule is the one who is just looking for love, and in this way become an unknowing accomplice in the crime. They are the most visible in the order, right? It's their name, it's their email address, it's their address, their IP. They're all over the order, and that's why we don't see any mismatches, because everything connects to the mule. So how does this fraud scheme actually work? How does the fraudster achieve? So first of all, very important, the fraudster doesn't open a credit card under anyone's name. What happens is that the fraudster has stolen credit card information. Once the fraudster has the address of the mule, they contact the bank of the credit card and change the billing address to match the mule's address. Now, this can be done in a lot of ways. One of the most common is social engineering the customer service agents of the bank. It's unfortunately easier than it sounds. Or you can open a fake utility, for example, a mobile phone bill to the credit card holder's name, but to the mule's address, and then it's much easier to add that address to the credit card. But what's important is once this address is added to the credit card, for every player in the e-commerce world, it will look like this credit card belongs to that address and belongs to the mule. So once the mule comes to the e-commerce platform and places the order, unaware that they are using a stolen credit card, they think that the credit card belongs to Kevin, who happens to be a fraudster. Everything seems to match. The mule comes to the platform, they place the order with their billing address, with their email, all of the data points pointing to them. And once they receive the package, they behave basically as a private freight forwarder, and they forward the package to the fraudster. And this way, the fraudster receives the gold or any other products without being even remotely visible in the order. What's important is that these mules who we see in these orders are coming from vulnerable group of people, either undereducated or elderly. We even had a case of a mentally disabled adult who was not legally allowed to own a credit card or even have one open in their name. And this is how their guardians understood that they have been pulled into something illegal, because suddenly they had a credit card number that they were using, and they had packages coming to the house, and they actually contacted us to understand how it has happened. And the fraudsters who are working these scams are extremely good at social engineering. They're giving the mules exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for love, they're looking for attention, they're looking for compliments. In some ways, they are also even getting the good feeling of being able to participate in a charity of doing good deeds. And in the end, they are just part of an illegal scam. So the big question is how you can stop this. As I said, these orders look perfect for the traditional fraud review. There are no mismatches in the order. So what we did is we had to come up with more sophisticated features, behavior features that catch this type of behavior. One of the things that you see here is a comparison of order amount variance in spending patterns of the identities. So you see that people, when they are placing legitimate orders, they're kind of spending the same amount. I am always ordering the same type of dog food for my dog online. So the variance in my order amounts is going to be very low. It's going to be very similar. Meanwhile, when I come and suddenly buy gold bars for a Fraudster abroad, then I'm going to spend much more, since it's not my own spending behavior that you can see. And this is one of the ways we can catch these orders and stop this pattern that I think are very important to take away from here. One is that we are constantly monitoring the fraud patterns and chargeback patterns in order to stop these attacks at the very beginning before they can benefit from our merchants and from the mules. Second, we have created a lot of new features for our AI models that look at behaviors, for example, spending patterns, browsing patterns, browsing times, how long you are spending on the website. I don't know about you, but before I buy something for several thousands of dollars, I spend a lot of time on the website browsing. But if someone is sending me, I'm going to spend much less time. One thing that's very important for me personally is to educate our partners. I used to be a teacher in a previous life, and I think educating everyone in your system is the way to make sure that everyone is safe. We always reach out to merchants who are likely to be attacked in such attacks. For example, precious metal merchants, luxury electronics merchants, and we make sure that everyone in their fraud team and in their customer service agents are familiar with these patterns and they can catch it. If someone calls them to say like, oh yeah, someone gave me a credit card number online on a dating website to order some gold that I'm going to send them later, then the customer service agent of the merchant has to know to look out for this pattern and stop this order. A lot of time we work together with these agents to verify orders before we fulfill them. And finally, I would like to say something about where I started. Finding love is hard enough. These people who fell victim for these fraudsters are vulnerable. Since they are not suffering any financial loss, it's not the mule's credit cards that's being used in the order. Their friends and families might never understand that they are part of an illegal scheme. But in the case of an investigation from the authorities, it's going to be them who is all over the order. It's their identity, it's their name, it's their computer. It's not only our business interest to stop these orders, but it's also our social responsibility to protect these vulnerable people, because we want to make sure that everyone works together in the e-commerce sphere so that people are not going to fall victims to scams when they are just looking for love. Thank you very much for listening. I can be found at this email address or at LinkedIn or at any of the dating apps that you like.